The theme of today is imagine what's next. And those three words fill me with so much joy because the fact that I can and want to imagine what's next is a miracle to me. Not that long ago, my mental health got in the way of any future I might ever hope to imagine. Now, when we think about mental health in our society, we think of it as an illness. And so what do we do when somebody has an illness? We look to fix them. We look to make them better. And so when a person presents to their GP with a mental health problem such as depression or anxiety, they're commonly given some time off work and then perhaps supported with medication and counselling to become well enough to then fit back into work. And for many people, this approach works. But for many more, because of the fluctuating nature of mental health, people return to work and sooner or later, the same problems resurface. And for the people that this happens to, they get stuck in frustrating cycles of employment and unemployment. I would like us to imagine a different future for mental health, where instead of trying to fix people to fit their environments, we look at ways to fix an environment to better suit an individual's needs. And I'd like to share my story with you today to illustrate this. So I am somebody who has spent my entire life in these cycles of employment and unemployment because of poor mental health. I am also somebody who took on board the idea that I needed to be fixed. After all, if I could be fixed, I could stop these cycles and then I could have the same successes as I saw my peers having. And so I tried everything. I tried medication and counselling. I've tried meditation, drama therapy. I've even tried cuddle therapy. I was that desperate, I'd try anything. And while all of these would help for a period of time, sooner or later, my mental health symptoms would flare up and I'd be left with no option but to leave work. Now, when you take on board the idea that you need to be fixed, it's pretty impossible to feel anything other than broken. And when you feel broken and you keep trying but failing to fix yourself, it's impossible to feel anything other than deeply, deeply ashamed. This is me in 2010. And this is where trying to fix myself took me. After many failed attempts, I'd given up trying. I'd spiraled down into a dark hole of despair. I was severely underweight. I was self-harming multiple times a week. I was self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. I was also a different gender, but we'll get to that. Fast forward to today, and I'm a happy, healthy man. I'm due to graduate next year with an honours degree. I have my own small business, and I'm held with enough merit to stand on this stage and talk with you today. Wow. I discovered the miracle therapy, right? Nope. I still have the same mental health problems. So what has happened to get me from there to here? What's happened is I have discovered I am not broken. And that if I do things differently, my mental health need not be an issue. And one of the key ways I have learned to do things differently is with flexibility. Now, I discovered this different way of doing things entirely by accident and over a period of time. And it began in 2010. Not long after this picture was taken, I hit rock bottom. I ended up in a recovery program, and I got clean and sober. And I started to do really well. So much so that I thought perhaps I had found the right therapy for me. I decided to try again to improve my life, and this time I enrolled on a distance learning degree course. Initially, I did really well, but then my mental health symptoms flared up again. And this time, what came out of that flare-up of symptoms was the realization that I am transgender. And what this means, that is, although I was assigned female at birth, I actually know myself to be male. Well, this was great on the one hand, to finally understand a lot of what had been going on for me. On the other hand, massive upheaval, having to come out, tell my family and friends, change my name, ask people to call me by a different pronoun, go through cross-sex hormones. Let me tell you, going through puberty at the age of 39 is no picnic. So I fully expected, with all of this going on, I was going to fail at study. Only I didn't. Why? Because studying was flexible. I could work it around everything that was going on for me. This is me in 2013. By this point, I'm a couple of years clean and sober. I'm a year into my gender transition. I'm doing so incredibly well. I still have mental health problems. I have all of the upheaval of gender transition to go through. But despite that, I'm still succeeding. For the first time in my life, I have issues, but I'm succeeding. I think now is the time then to return to work. I must be nearing fixed. So I set myself out a plan. I'm going to start with volunteer work, progress to paid part-time work, onto full-time paid work, which will coincide with the end of my degree, where I'll be fixed and ready to be happy and successful in the world. Fabulous plan. Didn't quite go like that. As I approached the end of my degree, still doing amazingly well in my studies, when it came to work, had not made it past the volunteer stage. Why? Because my mental health would continually flare up, and every time it did, had no option but to take time off work and eventually to stop that volunteer placement. So here I was again, after a couple of years being quite successful, back on this hamster wheel of failure. And I started to doubt myself. Perhaps study had been a fluke. Perhaps I was fundamentally broken, would never amount to anything else. Luckily, before that doubt could take over, I had a bit of an epiphany. And I began to see what I was doing. I was forever telling myself, when I'm well enough, I'll do X. When I'm well enough, I'll do Y. I was holding on so tightly to this idea of this place that existed where I'd be fixed, this magical well enough place. So I was running constantly on this hamster wheel, never getting any closer to it. Did this magical well enough place even exist? Did it even need to? I mean, I had the evidence of study on one hand that I could do this, I could do really well. Could I not take whatever was working with my studies and apply it to my career? So I decided that's what I was going to try to do. I had a hobby of making videos and writing about mental health and my gender transition. And I thought, let's see if I can turn this into a small business. So, over the last couple of years, I've laid the foundation of that business. At the beginning of this year, I went self-employed. During that time, I've had many mental health flare-ups. I've gone through numerous surgeries for my transition. I've added a health condition to the mix. My mum became seriously unwell, and I had to uproot my entire life. And then my mum passed away at the beginning of this year. Despite all of that, I have not failed at my business. I've kept chipping away. And I've come to realize why that is. It's because flexibility is far more than just being about working from home. Flexibility allows me to mold every single day around my needs on any given day. And I've identified that there are 4 key ways that flexibility allows me to do this. And this is flexibility of my time, so choosing the hours I work and when I work them. Flexibility of intensity, so choosing the difficulty level of task depending on how I feel. Flexibility of method, choosing how I work with others, and flexibility of my environment, choosing the place I work. To give you an example, how this works on a day where my mental health isn't great, I might choose to just do a few hours. Or I might choose to do a full day, but to choose the lower intensity tasks, the tasks that I find easier or enjoy more. If my anxiety is really high, and I'm finding it difficult to do face-to-face work with people, perhaps there's an important phone call I need to make, I can choose email as a method instead. And when it comes to my environment, on a bad mental health day, my environment can be my bed. Doesn't it really matter? As long as I get my work done, doesn't matter where I am. And with this, my mental health need not be an issue. But Finn, I hear you say, what about those deadlines in life? And you would be right. We do have deadlines. I couldn't very much well ring in today and say, would you mind if I just emailed you all my talk and you can just sit here, read it, watch an empty stage? You wouldn't be happy with that. I don't really blame you. But it's okay, because with this method, I can employ flexibility before and after an event like this. So, in the days following, I can choose these things. Because I wouldn't ordinarily push through high anxiety or low mood, I'd risk making myself worse. I can push through if I know that in the days following, I can use this to take care of myself. And this way, this helps on a daily basis, and it helps me to still do the big, scary, unmovable tasks without damaging my mental health. And now this isn't just about self-employment. Businesses now have the infrastructure to make incredibly flexible working arrangements. Even the most rigid-seeming environment, when you break flexibility down like this, you can see how it can be used anywhere. For example, asking your employer if you can do some different tasks on a day when you're struggling, or perhaps take a piece of work somewhere quieter. The key thing is, thinking about flexibility like this helps us to stop these cycles of employment and unemployment, because we're not putting people into environments that don't work for them. And with this, it helps us to redefine recovery, because recovery can't always be about being symptom-free. Recovery is actually about the ability to recover our lives regardless of the problems we face. And in this way, flexibility becomes accessibility in the same way that a ramp does for a wheelchair user. By sharing my story with you today, I have shown how lives can be changed for the better when we stop trying to fix people and instead look at ways to fix an environment to better suit an individual's needs. With flexibility, I've been able to recover my life from the shell of the person you met at the beginning of this talk and rewrite my story to the successful man you see stood here today. My hope, by sharing my story with you, is that you might think differently about flexibility and think about the ways you might ask for it and implement it in your own personal and professional lives. But, more importantly, by sharing with you today, I hope to show that needing to do things differently does not make us any less than anyone else. And that with flexibility, we can all recover our lives in whatever way that means to us and rewrite our stories to be as successful as anyone else can be. Thank you for listening.